Hello, welcome to Unit 2 of our course. Unit 2 is entitled Enablers of Community Engagement for Climate Change Action. In Unit 1, we defined community involvement in climate change actions and levels of community involvement. We saw that this inclusion reduces inequalities in community members, allows the use of local knowledge to adapt and mitigate climate change impacts, reduces the cost of climate change adaptation and mitigation measures, and helps to avoid creating new issues when adapting or mitigating climate change impacts. In this second unit, we are going to discuss enablers of community engagement for climate change action. The selection of communities to involve in climate change action is the starting point of the whole process. Climate change vulnerability is the indicator to use when selecting communities to involve in climate change plans. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, vulnerability in the context of climate change is the degree to which a system is susceptible to or unable to cope with adverse effects of climate change, including climate change, variability, and extremes. The degree of climate vulnerability is indicated by the Climate Vulnerability Index. Climate Vulnerability Index is a combination of three factors that are exposure, sensitivity, and coping capacity. Exposure depends upon long-term changes in temperature and precipitation, the frequency of extreme weather events, and weather-related disasters. Sensitivity depends upon the reliance of the population on natural resources for their livelihoods, the demographic structure, the status of the population, the health and sanitation facilities available to the population. Coping capacity refers to the ability of the population to adapt to changes in the circumstances brought about by climate change. Furthermore, we can have an economic or geographical related climate vulnerability. We talk about economic vulnerability when members of a community do not have financial means to cope with climate change impacts. For example, people living in slum areas. Geographical vulnerability refers to the communities located in locations that are more prone to natural disasters caused by climate change. For instance, community living near oceans. After identifying types of communities vulnerable to climate change and their characteristics, let us now have a look to factors that pave the way to inclusion of communities into climate change actions. Among those factors, we can mention transparency and realism, that is achieved by communicating right from the beginning of a project the objectives of the engagement process clearly to the stakeholders and avoiding overpromising actions, inclusiveness and fairness. That is achieved by not only considering influential members of the community, but also some communities members who are more vulnerable to the impact of climate change than others. Integrity. This requires upholding the key principles of transparency, collaboration, and accessibility throughout the engagement process. Partnership with community members to deliver changes. This requires not only to inform community members about the project, but allowing them to bring their inputs in terms of diverse unique culture, knowledge, and innovation into the project. Diverse and inclusive engagement strategies. This requires using a variety of engagement channels to communicate with different audiences who have varying experiences and needs in communities. Engagement is a process and not as an endpoint. Community engagement should not be seen as a means to an end. This can be achieved through tracking, measuring, and reporting on stakeholder engagement to understand what is effective and what is not working well. Community capacity building. This is achieved by encouraging the active involvement of the community within an engagement program through co-ownership and design practices, hence building capacity and upskilling members of the community. I hope you will find this unit informative and engaging. Be sure to read the materials, take the quiz, and most importantly, enjoy the journey. Thank you very much.